Welcome to NHK Newsline. I'm Ramin Malagard in Tokyo. Japan's new prime minister has promised full support for global efforts to ensure fair access to coronavirus drugs and vaccines. Suga Yoshihide spoke via video to the UN General Assembly. He covered the coronavirus, North Korea, and the Olympics. He also hailed the world body's 75th anniversary and urged countries to unite against the pandemic.
For the last 75 years, multilateralism has become stronger and made progress in the face of multiple challenges. I call on all of you to unite in solidarity so we can turn the current crisis into an opportunity to reinforce our cooperation.
Suga said Japan fully supports the development of therapeutics, vaccines, and diagnostics, and works towards ensuring fair and equitable access for all, including those in developing countries. He said Japan also works with international organizations.
The spread of the coronavirus is a human security crisis, posing a threat to the lives, livelihoods, and dignity of people across the globe. The guiding principle for us to overcome this crisis must be leave no one behind.
On North Korea's abductions of Japanese nationals, Suga said the issue must be resolved as soon as possible because of the advancing age of the victims' families. He added, as the new Prime Minister of Japan, he's ready to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un without preconditions. Suga concluded with a reference to the postponed Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics. He said Japan is determined to host the Games in the summer of next year. He said they would be proof that humanity has defeated the pandemic. And G7 finance ministers are monitoring the impact of the pandemic on the world's poorest countries. They say they'll extend a debt relief program beyond 2020 to help those nations manage the crisis. G20 leaders agreed in April to put a moratorium on repayments until the end of this year. The ministers from the G7 say worsening finances in developing countries oblige them to continue the debt freeze for longer. Chinese-controlled financial institutions have refused to join the initiative. The G7 ministers expressed regret about that decision. Japanese Finance Minister Asotaro said a fair response by all creditors, including China, is essential. Officials at the World Health Organization have indicated as many as 2 million people could die from the coronavirus before a vaccine becomes available.
It's certainly unimaginable, but it's not impossible, because if we look at losing 1 million people in 9 months, and then we just look at the realities of getting vaccine out there in the next 9 months.
Senior WHO official Michael Ryan stressed that reducing the grim estimate would require taking all possible measures, including testing, tracing, clinical care, and social distancing.
What is worrying to us is an increase in hospitalizations and an increase in bed occupancy for hospitalizations and also in ICU.
Technical Chief Maria van Kerkhove warned that medical institutions in many European countries are facing increasingly heavy burdens. Data from Johns Hopkins University show more than 32.4 million cases of COVID-19 have been reported worldwide. The global death toll is approaching 1 million people. And in a disappointing but not unexpected development, organizers of the Carnival Parade in Rio de Janeiro say they're postponing the event due to the coronavirus. Now, one of the world's great street parties had been scheduled for next February. Parade officials said on Thursday the situation is uncertain as no one knows when a vaccination will be available. They say they'll decide on a new schedule depending on progress in vaccine development. The parade of samba dancers in extravagant outfits is the highlight of the carnival, which draws millions of partygoers from around the world. Brazil currently has the world's third highest number of coronavirus cases. And the spreading coronavirus may have put limits on our lifestyles, but it has also created surpluses. Officials at Japan's agriculture ministry say the country has too much of a key food ingredient, butter. They cite falling demand due to the pandemic. The ministry will revise down its import quota for butter to 14,000 tons for the year ending March. Officials say Japan's butter stocks swelled to 39,000 tons as of July. That's up 41% from a year earlier and the highest level in 20 years. A major factor in the oversupply is falling demand from makers of souvenir sweets and other foods. Sales of these items have plunged, along with the drop in tourism and business travel caused by the pandemic. In Paris, police have opened an anti-terror investigation after a man and a woman were stabbed and seriously wounded on Friday in the eastern part of the city. 2 men were detained at separate locations nearby. Some local media outlets say one is an 18-year-old from Pakistan. The attack occurred near the former offices of satirical weekly Charlie Hebdo, which were stormed by Islamic extremists in 2015. 12 people died. After the trial began this month, Charlie Hebdo reprinted controversial cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. The weekly has since received threats from organizations and individuals claiming to be Islamic extremists. French Prime Minister Jean Castex visited the scene of Friday's attack and pledged to use all possible means to fight terrorism. Young people around the world have rallied in a coordinated call for more action against climate change. They took to the streets as part of the Fridays for Future campaign led by Swedish teenager Greta Thunberg. Organizers say there were more than 3,500 events spanning 150 nations. In the French city of Rennes, about 100 people wearing masks marched through a large avenue.
If we take action despite the risk of infection, we can stress the importance of this issue.
In Stockholm, Thunberg and a handful of others gathered outside Parliament.
The main hope is, as always, to try to to have an impact on the level of awareness and the public opinion, so that people will start becoming more aware of the climate crisis, so that we build up this pressure on the people in power, so that something happens.
Environmental justice?
Environmental justice!
Okay.
Here in New York, youth activists are engaging with Fridays for Future to talk about climate change.
The rally in New York City drew more than 20 people. One participant said it's up to younger generations to stop climate change. Organizers in Japan said gatherings took place at 75 locations. About 70 people rallied outside the Diet Building in Tokyo. They refrained from marching to help prevent the spread of the virus. Instead, they left placards and their shoes on the streets. One protester said Japanese people aren't so interested in global warming. She said she wants to convey the importance of the issue to as many as possible. And those were the stories for this hour.